Many people today have been taught that while Jesus was on the cross, he said that today in paradise, the thief next to him who seems to have repented, he would take him to heaven on that day. That's what most people are taught Jesus is saying here in Luke 23. But I want to point out some things that make this popular teaching about going to heaven when you die something that is not biblical. The placement of the comma dictates the doctrine of the immortal soul, so-called. So Jesus said, I tell you the truth, today, comma, you will be with me in paradise. In other words, where you put the comma will dictate your doctrine. So if Jesus is saying, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise, without the comma, that would sound like Jesus saying that today, right after we both die, probably on the cross, we will both go to heaven. By the way, Jesus, when he died, did not go to heaven. He had to fulfill the prophecy that said he had to go into the ground Sheol, which is gravedom, or the place of the graves in Judaism, which in the New Testament becomes simply the grave. So it would help this teaching to put a comma after the word today there. As you see, I tell you the truth today. So Jesus, in other words, is promising that day to that thief on the cross, or some believe it was a terrorist, that day he was promising him paradise. The second point would be that heaven is nowhere the destination of the dying, and that's J.T. Robinson. Comfort in the face of death is always related to the resurrection, as it is in John 11. So that's a typical Jewish worldview, that it's the resurrection from the dead that is always on the lookout for. The third point, paradise. So when Jesus said, today in paradise, you will be with me. But paradise is not heaven, but the future, the restored Eden or kingdom of God. And you can go to Revelation 2:7 and those other verses to help you there. In other words, today you will be with me in paradise. If Jesus is promising that on that day, he would restore the earth and bring about a restored Eden, the restored Garden of Eden, which is paraiso, that's the Greek word, which that's the understanding. Well, obviously, that did not happen. The kingdom of God is typified by the fact that there will be peace on earth. The kingdom of God means that the restored Davidic kingdom of Israel will be restored, and so on. So obviously that has not happened yet. And the last point is, Jesus promised to be in heaven with the thief on that very day. Not so. Again, he was 3 days in the grave, and then on earth after the resurrection. And then we are told he was taken up into heaven, remember in Acts 1. Now, here's a quote from Dead Men Talking by Dr. Thomas Warren III. First, we recognize that Jesus was speaking these words in order to encourage the thief, promising on that day that when he established his kingdom, the thief would be a part of it. Secondly, the promise Jesus gave the thief was not realized on that day, based on our discovery that Jesus did not go to paradise on the day of his death. Instead, Jesus entered the place of the dead, the grave, so in Hebrew, Sheol, the New Testament becomes Hades, which has been unfortunately mistranslated by the King James, which survives to this day as hell. He goes on, the thief too went into the grave and is awaiting the resurrection, according to 1 Corinthians 15. That's the famous resurrection chapter. Finally, the promise Jesus gave the thief is a promise for you and me today.